Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We've got a busy Tuesday for you. Tonight, a top economist. He'll join us to discuss why the nearly $2 trillion COVID relief package is a good bet for America and so critical as we speak. He'll also tell us who it's going to help the most. In addition, we show you the latest allegations against Governor Cuomo and also how he's responding to him. There's a third accuser now. Plus, the FBI director testified about the Capitol riot today and spoke about warnings that the Bureau received prior to the January 6th riot. We're going to show you what he said, plus other highlights from a contentious hearing. Also, a psychologist who works with teenagers joins us to discuss the toll that COVID is taking on our kids. But let's begin with in-depth coverage of the Biden administration's single most important priority, and I'd argue, obviously, the most important thing to America beyond just the vaccine in battling COVID with a stimulus bill. In a moment, we will have extended conversations with Mark Zandi, one of the most respected economists in the country. But first, the bill itself, what's in it and where the politics are. And for that, we turn to senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman.
And Rich, the clock is running less than 2 weeks now to get this bill passed through the Senate and signed into law. The target date is March 14th. That's a week from this coming Sunday. Unemployment benefits that were expanded in the last stimulus are set to expire on the 14th. So the bill has to be signed by then to prevent them from lapsing again. Again, the bill comes in right now at $1.92 trillion. That's a number that could change if the bill is amended. It would give $1,400 checks to tax filers, another $1,400 per dependent, and $3,000 child tax credits, all of which, by the way, the payouts decrease for people whose incomes are at $75,000 a year and above. The bill's got billions in aid to states, cities, and Indian tribes, plus money to help reopen schools, protect transit systems, and aid ailing pension plans. That money, known as state aid, comes as governors across the country warn of harsh rollbacks in funding to critical things like public hospitals, schools, police, and more, as every state in the country faces deficits from all the spending they did on COVID. The bill would also extend enhanced unemployment and give unemployment help to other workers as well. And it provides billions of dollars to expand COVID testing, as well as funding other scientific research on the virus. Now, the bill did not get a single Republican vote in the House, but this is a bipartisan bill. Overall, 76% of all Americans support the Biden stimulus plan. When you ask just Republicans, full 50% of them say they support the stimulus plan as well. Again, despite all the Republican objections we've heard in Congress, even the now dashed $15 minimum wage has majority support in Congress. With the minimum wage hike no longer a part of the bill, the main Republican objections have shifted. Some now suggest that either no stimulus is needed or a smaller stimulus might get the job done. Others are now focusing on that state aid, continuing the old and debunked complaint that any state deficits are just the result of bad governance. But right now, most Senate headcounts have the vote right at 50-50, meaning Vice President Kamala Harris would have to break a tie. But that also means even a single Democratic defection on the bill would all but sink its chances. So mollifying moderate Democrats like West Virginia's Joe Manchin and Arizona's Kristen Sinema are essential to getting the bill passed. Rich?
Andrew, thank you very much. I want to bring in our guest, Mark Zandi. Mark is chief economist of Moody's Analytics. Mark, a lot I want to unpack, but I want to start off, as you did, with half full. If the predictions are right, and we don't know how the variant works, but let's, at least look on the sunny side for once. If they're right, you say around July 4th here, we'll have herd immunity in this country. And everybody is going to want to go back to the world that we used to know. There's a lot of demand here. People are going to want to go spend. The economy should get a kickstart just by the very nature here of what we've gone through in the past year, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've had 50 million Americans vaccinated. We have another 50 million or so that have been sick. So that's about 100 million people with some form of immunity. To get to herd immunity, we need to get to about 250 million. And if you do the arithmetic based on how many people are getting vaccinated and how many people are getting sick right now, sometime between Memorial Day as late as July 4th, but certainly by July 4th, conservatively speaking, I think we'll feel a lot better about the pandemic. And once that happens, they start coming out. They start doing things they haven't been doing. And high-income households, high net worth households have saved a lot of money. So they have a lot of cash, a lot of pent-up demand. That combination is going to be pretty powerful. So we'll get a lot of growth later this year.
And while there's never unanimity in everything, in most economic circles, the argument has been, I know that you support this as well, the package that comes out of the government, better to go big in this particular case. And you believe the $1.9 trillion package, if passed, does it the right way in that they're putting money in the pockets of people who need it most because the pain of the pandemic has not been shared equally?
Yeah, that's right. If I were king for the day, I'd probably do things a bit differently here and there. But, broadly speaking, certainly given the political constraints, I think this is landing in a pretty good place. And, most significantly, it's providing a lot of support, financial support to lower income, low middle income households, minority groups, people that, came into the pandemic behind the financial eight ball. And of course, they've gotten completely crushed by the pandemic. They don't own a home. They don't own any stocks. Their healthcare has been relatively poor. They're the folks that have suffered unemployment or underemployment. So they need the help, and they'll need it, a significant amount of help to get back to square one. So, yeah, I think it's, a very good package in that respect. It's targeted to the people who need it most.
And let's talk about some of the highlights from the package. Obviously, a $1,400 check per person. You can do the math. If it's a couple, you add child credits to it. There's an infusion of money. And the good thing, Mark, is to simplify it, they're going to spend the money.
Yeah, these folks, they still struggling with unemployment and underemployment. The unemployment rate today is still 6.3% nationwide. And of course, the Black Hispanic unemployment rate is still in double digits. You still have a lot of people who are working, but they're not getting the hours that they need or want. So you got people that have even stepped out of the workforce, right? Because they need to go home and take care of their kids because they're not in school, and so they haven't been working, not even counted as unemployed. So these folks really are under a lot of stress, and this money will go a long way to helping them. And as soon as they get that money, they'll go out and spend it. You could see it, for example, in the last couple of months. Remember back in December, the support was running out. The Congress and the Trump administration were debating whether they should provide another round of support, and they didn't pass a bill until the very end of December. So if you look at the economic data in December, it was very, very weak. We lost jobs in December. In January, the Trump administration, Congress passed a bill at the end of December. The money started flowing into the economy in January, and the economy came right back to life. In January, retail sales were up 5%. It feels like we're off and running here. So the government support is really, really critical to those lower income households, and they will spend that money quickly once they get it.
And beyond just the check, the premise at least would be that there'd be an extension of unemployment insurance. Moreover, they'd stop evictions and foreclosures. They'd help with child care support. On top of that, there'd be a conscious effort to feed Americans that are struggling, whether it be through SNAP or through WIC, and also employing some of the restaurants to help with this Feed America program. Again, the idea is that just because the doors can open up, it's not that everyone's going back to a job or in a position right now where they can make up for the past year. That's at least, as I understand, and correct me, Mark, that's where the focus is, that the bottom doesn't drop out on the bottom half or bottom third of the country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, we just got to remember the pandemic is still on. We're talking about herd immunity, and I think we're on track to achieve it by mid-year. But we still got a long way to go here, and that it's a long time between here and there. And of course, there's a lot of uncertainty around all of it. Things could still go off the rails. So given all that, I think it's very important, critical, that the federal policymakers can continue to provide that kind of support to the hardest pressed. Now, there are some elements of the plan that may be larger than is needed based on what we know right now. But there's a lot of uncertainty here, and things can certainly go off script. The other thing I'd point out is, it's very difficult for the federal government to target the money, to design the programs and the support in a way that goes exactly where the need is, just because of the politics of things. I mean, you got 50 states, each 50 states wants to get their share of the money. Of course, the need isn't distributed across the country evenly. So given that, that very difficult reality, it makes sense to go big, to have, use more funds so that, it gets to it ultimately helps the places that need it. Some places are going to get more than they certainly need, but it's an unfortunate consequence of the fact that you got lots of places that really need the help, and we need to get it to them.
The one area, Mark, and maybe it is bipartisan, but people are afraid to stick their necks out in certain political circles, is state aid. the idea that any state in the union wants to go and say to folks, okay, well, I'm either going to have to raise taxes to make up for the huge shortfall, or I'm going to cut essential services like fire, police, medical care even, et cetera, is political suicide. I've seen a few, certainly some Republican mayors and maybe a Republican governor, let's say in West Virginia, a few places, saying that as well. But that's a huge part of this. Every state capital is dying for the federal government to help subsidize them so they don't go through what could be only described as a horrific budgetary decision.
Yeah, here's one case, though, Rich, that I would, you could be more targeted. I mean, we've done a bit of work trying to understand the budget shortfalls of state and local governments. And one thing we've found is that it's not across all 50 states. So there are a dozen states that have very significant fiscal problems, mostly states that depend on the tourist industry, like Florida or Nevada, or the energy industry because of the collapse in oil and commodity prices. And then there's another 8, 9, 10 states that are struggling. They probably could manage through. It'd be difficult, but they could manage through. And that leaves the other half of states that are doing okay, pretty well. So if I were king, what I would do is probably scale back some of that aid and use that money for the next package around infrastructure, because I do think infrastructure spending, broadband and public infrastructure and basic roads and bridges is something that would be very, very helpful to the economy on the other side of the pandemic to get back to full employment as fast as possible. This package is about relief, kind of bridging to the end of the pandemic, but on the other side, we're still going to have millions of people that are permanently unemployed, and we need to get them back to work, and that money could be used for that. So, I'm criticizing around the edges here, but that's one place where I think that there could be some changes to make it more efficacious.
Up next, more with Mark Zandi, including his thoughts when it comes to raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and also how we can help the people who need it most.